All right, so as someone who went and saw the original Beetlejuice in the theater as a kid, yes, I'm that old, I was really looking forward to this movie. And after seeing it, it didn't disappoint. That's not to say it was perfect. It's definitely not perfect. As a matter of fact, my wife and I are on different opinions on this because she didn't like it at all, said it was horrible. I think it was very entertaining, but it definitely had flaws. So that being said, I'm going to talk about the good, and then I'm going to talk about the bad. And I want to start with what Tim Burton did with this movie, because he really worked hard to bring back the same feel of the original. The practical effects mixed with some CGI, but not a lot of CGI, because we still need that old late 80s feel and the practicality of real effects, and he used it really, really well. This is a very whimsical world we're going into, and that whimsical aspect of it is still there, and they bring it right back to the beginning of where all this started. Some of the same scenes, or actually a lot of the same scenes, you may recognize the setting for. So that really captures the nostalgia of this movie. The score by Danny Elfman, it's fantastic. I mean, you have the classic Danny Elfman Beetlejuice score throughout this entire movie. The cinematography is also very much like the original. It kept that same feel, it kept the same nostalgia. I love the overhead drone scenes that you got from the original. It's also set in here, so there's a lot of similarities. Character-wise, Michael Keaton crushed it. I was concerned that he couldn't bring that same energy of Beetlejuice back now that he's in his 70s, but I was very quickly proven wrong. He crushed it. I mean, I can't believe how well he did. The character doesn't seem any different than it did 35 years ago. Looks the same, acts the same, has the same voice and tone. I mean, absolutely loved seeing him on screen. Winona Ryder was the same way. She really brought Lydia Deetz as an adult to life in a way that makes me feel like that is Lydia 35 years later. So the personality is still there. The facial expressions are still there. I love her. And I can say the same thing with Catherine O'Hara. Delia Deetz. You know, fits right in. She's weird, she's eccentric, she's just, you know, I mean, you saw the original, you know how she is. Just same person, much older. And now that they are older, Lydia and Delia have a totally different relationship. And I really love the story behind it. The way they act with each other now, the way they talk as adults about not only themselves, but about Lydia's daughter, Astrid. Because there is some things going on with Astrid and her attitude that reminds Delia of Lydia. And she gets this little payback's kind of a bitch type smirk on her face at times, like, now you know what I was dealing with. So I really enjoyed that development. Now, as far as the story itself is concerned, I feel like this had a really strong story. I really enjoyed this story. I thought it was written really well. And Astrid is a main focus of that story. She finds a new love interest, things happen, Lydia has to get involved, of course then Beetlejuice has to get involved, and this whole adventure that they go on, I loved it. I think it was great. There was actually a major part in development of this story. I'm actually kind of upset I didn't catch it sooner. My wife caught it literally like 4 minutes, 5 minutes maybe, before the reveal, and she's like, this is going to happen. Watch, this is going to happen. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I could see that, but why didn't I see that? And then when it happened, she just looked at me and went, told you. I'm like, oh! But it was great. It was a great part of the story and the development, and I had a lot of fun with it. And then when they go to the afterlife, which, you know, the waiting room, take a number, sit in line, that whole thing comes back, and I really enjoyed that world, that the world that Tim Burton takes you to. It's so much fun. And when Lydia and Beetlejuice are interacting and they're doing their thing and there's that banter back and forth between them, it just makes me really glad I saw this movie, and I'm glad that they made it. Now, with all that being said, there are parts of this movie I was not a fan of. There were some songs in here that just didn't seem to fit. I guess what I'm trying to say is the Danny Elfman score is really good, but they added some new songs in here that just seem awkward and misplaced. And it kind of ruined a major scene here and there. I could have done without it. And then we have the story, which I said I enjoyed, which I do, but we have a couple underlining sub-stories that I could have done without. There were a couple characters that we're following aside from Beetlejuice, Lydia, Astrid. We also have Willem Dafoe's character who plays this, I guess we'll say, underworld cop. And then we also have Monica Belluci, who played Beetlejuice's ex-wife. These two characters I personally could have done without. If you remove them from the movie completely, the movie wouldn't change at all. You're still following the story with Lydia and Beetlejuice and Astrid, and it's completely separate from Monica Belluci and Willem Dafoe's character. So why are they in there? I mean, it's just throwing more characters in there than we need and sub-stories that can get very convoluted. That's the biggest downfall, is this does seem convoluted from time to time. I understand they want to try to explore Beetlejuice's origins a little bit more by throwing in his ex-wife, but with this particular story, I don't think it was necessary. I also don't think Willem Dafoe's character was necessary. As a matter of fact, I found him kind of annoying. I really didn't enjoy his character. I just feel like that character was forced. It was very out of place. And when he was on screen, I just couldn't wait for him to get off screen. And the same with Monica Belluci's character. I thought she had more of a place in this than Willem Dafoe did, but I don't think they utilized her well. Now, they could have worked her in there and made a secondary story to go with this primary story, but they didn't do it well enough. Her character, like I said, with Willem Dafoe's, could have completely eliminated her from the movie, wouldn't made a lick of difference. The movie would have turned out the same either way. She was more of a nuisance than anything. And speaking of nuisance, there's still one other character that I have not brought up, and that was Lydia's dad, Charles. Now, we all know that he's essentially dead, and that turns into a sub-story as well. So it's like we're chasing 2 to 3 other stories aside from the primary story. Again, convoluted. So if we could just narrow it down a little bit, just focus on Beetlejuice, Lydia, and Astrid, this would have been a perfect sequel. I mean, it would have just fit in great. I would have had no second thoughts, but we added all these little sub-stories. We add a couple very misplaced songs, and it throws questions in the air of why did they do this? But now that I've explained both the good and the bad of this movie, overall, I enjoyed it. It was not as good as the original. I did not expect it to be, but it's a nice continuation. It's something to fill in the gap. Give you a little more Beetlejuice. Give you a little more that goes with the most. I want to know what happened down the road later. I'm still going to say the original is fantastic. It is the best. It is a cult classic, and it will always be that. This one I can see eventually being lost in time. It's something that gives the Beetlejuice franchise another boost, but this isn't one that's going to help support it. I had fun. I will watch it again, but it's definitely going to be a love it or hate it kind of movie. As a matter of fact, I still have a lot to say, so I am going to be making a spoiler review. Make sure you stick around for that one as well. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe button, and I'll see you at the concession stands.